My answer to this question is yes, but it's not for the reasons you're thinking about right now. So here's the deal. I finished watching Agame ga Kill, and because I'll criticize this anime heavily in just a bit, I have to preface this and say that I think it's a good show. The animation is nice, the fights are epic, the humor is jokingly homophobic sometimes, but generally good. Both intros slap as fuck and the characters are very relatable, even some of the antagonists. You should definitely go watch it. But here's the deal, why the show is still on my mind. Spoilers, every single character gets killed. Like, who's left after episode 24? Akame and Agenda, Wave and that weird angel dude. Everyone else is dead, period, even Tatsumi. I rewatched the first episode and, except for Akame, every one of the speaking characters in there dies by the end of the season. And this has brought me to a larger observation that isn't limited to this show, but regards all modern visual storytelling. I think movies and TV shows these days, yes, that makes me sound like a boomer, take far too much liberty in killing characters. Now, I'm not talking about extras. Having a lot of collateral damage is a perfectly fine part of many genres, such as action, war movies, and thrillers. I mean, protagonists, antagonists, and minor characters. Everyone that's important in some way. Basically everyone who has more than a couple of lines of speech. And I actually haven't watched Game of Thrones, so I don't think I dislike this trope enough. Though it's not a general thing that everyone does these days, it's still something that comes up frequently enough that I take notice. Specifically, there are a bunch of shows I can think of which only kill one protagonist or minor character. Now you may notice a couple of universally liked shows on this list. And that's because there is a good way and a bad way to do this. Basically, if a death has no weight, it doesn't mean anything. The reason that Spike's death is probably one of the most impactful protagonist deaths in TV and cinema history is that while we lose a character we've become very attached to, it also makes a lot of sense. Spike has stopped living long ago, in a sense. He doesn't care about his life anymore, even if he cares about others. The entire show is just us waiting for how he will go down, if his death will bring the final bit of meaning to a life that has long lost it. And when it finally happens, it hits different. There was a comment on one of my SAO videos a year ago saying that Cowboy Bebop is the greatest show of all time. And while there are so many contenders, I must agree. Now, all to say that that's a pretty special case. Most character deaths are just sad, but that's actually a good thing. That means that we have become attached to the character. The reason Yugo's death in Battle Angel Alita, movie and manga, is so heartbreaking is because that guy just full on redeemed himself from being a cyborg robber to trying to take down the very structures that employed him. And so it's a terrible moment when he falls down the cables of Salem, facing the same fate that should have killed Alita so many years ago. Code Geass is extremely similar in Shirley's death, though it's more complex. At this point, I actually wanted to insert a whole other essay about my grand Code Geass theory, but we don't have time for that, so there will be a second video shortly. In any case, Yujo must be mentioned for being the nicest, best, good guy in the world, and there are no excuses for his death at all. Like, at all! You hear me, Kawahara? Anyways, on the other hand, there are also two ways that this can go wrong. First, if you kill characters that nobody cares about, nobody's gonna care. Ah yes, replaceable girl number 6 got murdered. What a waste. On next week's episode of light novel action anime with a way too long name. I think that very much applies to Shele, honestly. I couldn't care too much about her death. But second, if you kill too many characters, people will also stop attributing significance to their lives. I think that's a problem which JoJo has to some extent. If at least one character dies every episode, we might already say goodbye to all of them. A certain level of expectancy is reached for the viewer, and they lose interest in deaths. I was actually surprised that not more people died in Code Geass. I was fully convinced that Nunnally wasn't coming back. These 2 seasons have a pretty hefty collection of deaths, and yes, I am convinced that it didn't have to be a protagonist dies series. We can bring this back to one of the oldest constants in storytelling. If a story is too predictable, it gets boring. Like many of the arts, especially music, the story with the greatest appeal is one with the ideal ratio between familiarity and unpredictability. Now, I'm not saying the best story needs to or will have these properties, especially because art is subjective. But we can clearly see that many well-regarded stories are based on established concepts with their own novel twists, like Neon Genesis Evangelion, which rides on the mecha anime wave of the 90s and at the same time supersedes its predecessors but also completely turns the genre upside down. It should now seem logical that keeping to established form too much will result in a work that's mediocre at best, because everything it does has been done before. It will be a cheap imitation of previous art without something to contribute. I'm not saying that this is Akamega Kill. No, I think while it follows established conventions, it still finds its own way. But while many tropes have been used and overused for decades in movies and TV, killing the protagonist is only recently entering this list. It had been an unusual, rare feature just a little while ago, but shows like Game of Thrones exemplify how it has been lowered from a razor-sharp tool of specialized effect to just something that action shows do these days. I find that sad because I don't actually mind protagonists, or any major character for that matter, getting killed for a good reason. But when having the protagonist die is a baseline for modern action show of any genre, it disappoints me. There are so many cool things that stories can still do. I mean, everything has been done before, but not in every combination and not from every perspective. I did seriously consider killing both protagonists of Blue Angel. It would have made for a good story, maybe, but I decided it was not worth it. Most of the strength of Blue Angel's ending comes from the fact that it is not violent, even though the rest of the story deals with violence, power, and strength. Violence is not a solution, that was my message. And should I have dumped it just to be one of the cool kids? No. So please, dear screenwriters, put more thought into it before you use this dangerous weapon of yours. It could kill your entire cast. And after all, they made a promise to survive.